Yo guys, what's happening? It is the weekend, Friday coming up, and I found this kind of interesting video that we're going to go through here. And typically I don't make you watch the wargaming video, I just comment on it, but I'm going to do it this time. We're going to try a new format, we'll see how it works here, but kind of interesting because this is about the new Ranked Battles season that's coming up. I got my coffee, by the way, hopefully you've got yours. It is Friday afternoon, and it is the afternoon, so it's definitely past 12 o'clock. Adult beverages are in order as well. I prefer coffee at the moment. Ranked Battles is coming back, and they're trying some new mechanics, which I thought were kind of interesting. We're going to talk about those. I have a couple concerns about them, but I think more on the meta side of the house there, it's really interesting to me that we are now sort of branching off into 3 or 4 different directions as far as development goes, and with different modes of this game. So what do we got? We got the pub match, we've got ranked battles, we've got frontline, and we've got an offshoot of the pub match called grand battles. And 3 of those are starting to get different game mechanics. Now, I think some of these offshoots are testing game mechanics that may port over to the other modes, but that's not necessarily true. So it's kind of an interesting time in World of Tanks where they're really kind of testing out all these different changes in their game mechanics. My concern on that is that we just end up with 3 different basic games going on with different rules, and that's kind of a pain. But we'll see how it goes. This is for ranked battles, and they've changed some of the game mechanics. And I thought this first part was really interesting because it is a little concerning. Let's just listen to their words, and I'll comment, we'll pause it, and we'll go from there.
The new season of Ranked Battles starts soon. At WG Fest, we announced some of the changes awaiting players in the upcoming season. Now it's time to talk details. Let's start with role experience.
All right, role experience. I think my eyebrows are going crazy. That's what happens as you get old, man. Your eyebrows they get their own mind and stuff starts happening. You know, it's all the hair that you're losing up here starts coming out of. Anyway, that was tangent. Role experience, okay? I mean, the second I heard this, my ears both perked up because I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And at the same time, my spidey senses said, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Well, let's see what they're talking about.
Role experience is a new mechanic in the XP crediting formula that will replace the experience for active battle actions. Situations where players who didn't make any tangible contribution to the battle outcome.
Okay. We'll change the active battle experience. He said replace. Later on, it's admitted that it's more of an addition, not a replacement. Or is it an addition? I don't know. I don't know if when we get there, it seems like it is some extra experience added on for certain reasons. We'll get to that in the video. Not a complete replacement of the other experience that we already have, which is for damage and assist damage and such. So that right off the bat was a little bit confusing. And if we back it up, what does he say?
Battle actions. Situations where players who didn't make any tangible contribution to the battle outcome were top of the team by experience became quite common.
Okay, I have no idea what he's talking about right there. No tangible effect on the battle outcome, and they were top of the team by experience. I do not understand. Either we have a translation error or a semantics thing or something, but that's not a thing. You know, yeah, you get experience for sitting around, but obviously you had some tangible effect. You either did damage or spotting or something. I think what they're getting at there is basically saying people who don't do anything get experience, so we want to help people who do actively do things to get more experience, but they already do. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Let's move on and see what they have to say, because what's the plan?
Due to this old system of XP crediting, It often happened due to crediting XP for active battle actions.
See, I didn't understand that. They got experience from active. They didn't do anything for the team, but they got experience for active battle notifications. There's something going on with the translation that's not quite right there. I think what he's saying is people were angry because people got experience. They didn't really contribute to the team. But I don't think that you ever really saw top experience or even top third of experience of people who just simply didn't do anything. You know, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, if the whole enemy team did 0, you had 10 people with 0 damage, which, you know, on occasion happens. Okay, maybe in that case, but it certainly wasn't an epidemic of people doing nothing being in the top of experience, even on losing teams. So we're missing something right there. I think I've kind of described what I believe the problem is that they think they're solving with this. So let's move on.
This led to tons of questions from players, and it wasn't quite obvious how it was calculated.
Since in ranked battles, it's important where players place.
The experience calculations have always been a question. I don't think they've ever really put the formula out. We have some information on it, but I don't know if anyone's ever really been able to break down the formula. And I think that's on purpose. It's probably proprietary or back end stuff they don't really want the players to know. So they what's funny here is they admit that nobody really knows how it's done. So they decided to change it, but they're not going to tell us how it's done. I thought that was a strange segue right there for them.
We decided to start reworking the experience system, starting with this very mode.
Each Tier 10...
That's what makes me think that it's eventually going to go to everything. We decided to start reworking the experience system, which sounds like the whole thing writ large, with this mode, which means I think it's going to port into the rest of the stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, that's fine. Rework the experience system. Is it really a problem? I don't know. I know that obviously artillery players don't like it too much because they really sort of get the short straw on the experience. But I've never really seen it be that big of a problem. Overall, it seems to work pretty well. It seems to indicate your performance in battle and have a direct correlation to winning and being good at the game. So I'm not really sure necessarily what the problem was. Maybe the numbers could have been moved around. I don't know, but there's not, to me, a huge hue and cry about, oh my gosh, we have a problem with this experience system. Now, if they want to iteratively improve their stuff, then fantastic, go for it. But it's very strange to me that it was a big deal. I think the complaint was that bad players could rank up in ranked battles by not really doing a whole bunch, just by spamming games, the way they had it built up. And that was kind of the problem. And they do mention that a little bit, but I don't know if this is necessarily the fix. It could be a part of the fix, but here's where it really gets interesting for me. We're going to back it up slightly here.
Each Tier 10 vehicle will be assigned a role depending on its purpose in battle. Roles will correspond with a certain set of actions.
Each Tier 10 will be assigned a certain role and will get XP for a certain set of actions. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. What we have here is the developers sitting back. Some of them, all of them probably play. Most, I guess, probably play. Not necessarily. They don't necessarily have to play to design the game, be an artist and that kind of thing. But the developers that are dealing with the rule set of the game are sitting back and talking in these meetings about what the role of a tank is. And that one just makes me roll my eyes. Not that kind of roll, the other roll. My eyes are, the roll of my eyes are to roll right now. Wow. That is a horrendously bad idea. To sit there and say, tank X does this and tank Y does this, and we'll give them extra experience for doing X and Y, because now you're incentivizing people to play that tank in a very certain way in order to get that extra experience. Now, if it is a situation where this extra experience, and they do describe it later on, it's kind of on top of the other experience that you're getting. If they do incentivize it enough to where you can see that difference, you're going to get people playing those tanks exactly the way it's incentivized. And that is not necessarily the way you should play the tank, given the situation, the map, the mode, yada yada. It's not necessarily the fun way to play the tank, and it's certainly not if you want to do something a little different, it's disincentivizing that. Maybe I'd like to drive my WT Tier 9 soft, WT4, whatever it is, up to the front and do a little punchy face. Maybe the situation dictates that. But now I'm getting less experience because I'm playing it in the way that the developers decided that was not the way to play that tank. Now, if it's a small amount of experience to where you can't really notice it, then really it's a wash and it doesn't matter. But if they're trying to make it noticeable, now they're trying to incentivize certain roles for tanks. I think that's a terrible idea. Now, they do, we'll get to it, they do talk about things like, all right, if you're an assault TD, you're more like a heavy, you'll get incentives for that role. If you're a ambush TD, you'll get incentives for that role. But again, I go back to, the game is played the way the players play the game, not the way the devs want the game to be played. That's one of the biggest mistakes right off the bat of a game developer, is trying to hold on, especially in a mature game, trying to hold on to dictating how the game is played. Right? This game has been out so long that attempting to now build roles for tanks is not a great idea. It's not a great idea. All right, we'll move on.
For scouts, this means spotting, assistance, and assisted damage. For a heavy tank, this usually means blocking and dealing damage.
This usually means blocking and dealing damage. Again, translation is an issue, but when you use the word usually, is it or isn't it? Usually I'm going to get some extra for blocking, or it means blocking and dealing damage. It's kind of important. It really is. And this is where it gets interesting, because now they accept the fact that there's different kinds of heavies. So how are they going to handle it?
Yes, heavy tanks such as the Mouse and the Super Conqueror will have the same set of role actions. However, it's obvious that it's easier to block damage and trade hit points in a super heavy tank, whereas it's easier to deal damage in the Super Conqueror. That's why we balanced the role experience for this vehicle class with different coefficients.
All right, danger, danger. Here we go again. They used to have that in the Matchmaker. They had weight for separate vehicles, and they guesstimated, and I'm sure they used some numbers, and they had these weighting systems, and it really contributed to the off-kilter Matchmaker and the really bad matchmaking you'd get, where you would get 6 heavies on one side and 1 heavy on the other side. Now they're talking about bringing that same sort of idea into the inter roles of heavy tanks, where a Super Conqueror is going to get more weight, I guess, for damage and less weight for block, and a Mouse is going to get more weight for blocking and less weight for damage. But the problem is, back to my discussion earlier, is that the tank is played how the player plays it. Sometimes, situationally, that Super Conqueror is going to bounce crazy shots off its turret. If it's played right, it's hold down, it's just poking its turret, all that good stuff. Whereas the Mouse may actually be the opposite. Maybe he doesn't do a lot of blocking, but he absolutely plows down the damage. So you're incentivizing people to play the tank in a certain way that you assume is the way that that tank should be played. And because the weight and coefficients and things don't change according to map and mode and situation, they can't. There's no way they can do that. It's this one size fits all. And now if you play your Super Conqueror a certain way, you stand to get more experience. But buddy, if you do it another way, then you're right out. That's not your role, pal. You know? And again, I go back to the initial, one of the initial things I said, where maybe it's so small it doesn't matter. Maybe in the large meta it doesn't matter, but then why are you doing it if it doesn't matter? So clearly they want to create something that creates an incentive that matters to their game. And now they're attempting to dictate how certain tanks are played. Now, it dictates probably too harsh a word. It's not like they're going to punish you necessarily hard for not playing the Super Conqueror the way that they think it should be. But there's a little bit of punishment, because you're not going to get that coefficient if you don't do the certain specific things they think a Super Conqueror can do. And frankly, I am not convinced that they really know that much about how their game is played. Not at the level that the players who've played a lot of games like us, like we have. You know, they have to be good stewards of their game. They can't just let it grow and become some big monster. They can't let Guido, some community contributor, decide how the game's going to be played. I get that. They have to be good stewards, but at the same time, they have to understand that that kind of thing is really not in their hands. And I think it's enough to give experience for damage and spotting and stunning for artillery and things like that. Maybe iteratively move the numbers around so that it works out. But this, I really don't think this is the answer right here.
Even among vehicles of the same type, we've outlined the role groups. For example, the role actions for assault TDs will be more like a heavy tanks, while ambush TDs, such as the STRV or grill, will have other coefficients.
When you perform role actions, the coefficient in the experience crediting formula rises. It is applied to the sum of experience earned for dealing damage, destroying enemy vehicles, and assisting allies.
So that's what I was talking about earlier. This is something on top. It's a modifier, an addition, whatever you want to call it. So it sounds like the more you do whatever that role is for that particular tank, the more experience you get for that particular tank. Whether it is by tank or a subclass of, say, ambush TDs, which they just use that word, and assault TDs, that I don't know, and it's not spelled out in this video. So then there's obvious questions are begged. What are those specific subsets of roles? What is it you think I should be doing in a Mouse or a Sturv or an assault TD or a scout for that matter? You know, if I'm in a Chinese scout, which is more of a combat, closer to medium than a scout in a lot of cases, is that a separate kind of scout than if I'm in my Hawk 12? I say Hawk 12 because I'm playing it a bunch and it's a terrible little tank, but it's so fun to play it so bad. But anyway, you see what I'm getting at here is that going to be advertised? Is it going to be a generality? Is this just another secret formula on top of things that we're not going to know? There are so many questions involved in this. But I have to go back to the basics of attempting to define roles in a mature game for specific tank classes that already have them. It's out there. It's already done. You might say, well, Guido, if they're already there, then maybe they're just following that. They're going to add extra experience onto it. And then I counter that with, of course, you can play any tank in this game in any role. And I have said this from the very beginning. There are no roles for tanks in World of Tanks. The only role there is to win, and the subset of that is to do damage. Really, it's a hit point reduction game. He who reduces hit points faster typically wins, either to 0 or enough to cap to where I can't be stopped from capping, whichever one of those comes first. So there are no real roles. Some tanks do better than others doing certain things, but those are situational. It depends on the match, the map, the time, the part of the match you're in, the beginning, the middle, the end. I mean, there are so many what ifs right there, and a lot of that stuff is already well established for what tanks do what, and attempting now to dictate it by, again, I'm using the word dictate, it's not exactly what I mean, but attempting to incentivize something with extra experience that may or may not fit into how somebody individually plays their tank. I just think that's a colossally bad idea. It's a non-starter for me. I'm sort of surprised that they're actually even doing it this way. Hey, revamp your experience system, give more experience for certain things, but to come straight out and go, hey, certain tanks have certain roles, if you do these things then you'll get more experience, I just have to go, well, I don't want to play that way, right? It's a lot like the blocking damage missions, okay? You've incentivized me to drive out and block damage because I want to get this mission done. I'm not really concerned as much about winning or doing damage or some other things, right? I might be, because maybe that's just the player I am, but maybe I just want to get through these 10 stupid blocking missions. So I'm going to take my mouse, park it at an angle somewhere, and hope everyone bounces me enough, and I'll move on. It's incentivizing silliness, and this really, I think, enters into that kind of thing.
The goal of role experience is to recognize the player's correct actions and also make experience crediting more transparent.
Okay, I think it makes it less transparent because I don't really understand exactly how they're going to do it, and maybe more information comes out and I'm completely wrong there. So that I get that, but that was a great. We have to listen to that sentence again because it's fantastic.
Is to recognize the player's correct actions and also make experience crediting more.
To recognize the player's correct actions. Do tell. Please give me a list of the correct actions. I mean, come on, guys, really? I would love to see your list of correct actions because I think that they're probably going to be considerably different than mine. And I would imagine considerably different. I don't know. That's probably not it. But I would take exception with the majority of them, simply because they were called correct actions just to begin with, right off the bat on that. And I just think it's a colossally bad idea. And the verbiage that's used, recognizing that there may be some translations thing here, and I'm putting a little too much emphasis on certain words. I get that. That's very possible. But wow, this is not a good thing on my book.
More transparent.
Role experience is not the only deciding factor of the whole experience formula. Players will continue receiving XP for regular actions such as damage, assisted damage, and vehicles destroyed. So if a mouse driver is destroyed after blocking 10,000 damage, but doesn't show any results regarding damage, vehicles destroyed, and assistance, they won't get any role experience.
So you just told me that a Super Heavy's part of their role, if you are playing it right, is to block damage as part of the calculation. So you tell me, hey, you need to go out and play your mouse right. And I go out and I go to a corner, and I hold a corner against 5 tanks, and I block 10,000, but I only do 500 because I can only get one shot in. The rest of my team sweeps around, crushes them, comes in behind those 5 and wipes them out. Now you're going to tell me, oh, well, you didn't do damage, so you didn't really do your role, which is blocking and damage. And I'm thinking, bruh, what do you want from me, man? I held off 5 guys. Now, the game can't see that. That's one of the major problems with this system, is that you are trying to create a template of what the role is and then shoehorn it into every game and hoping it catches some of the right, correct gameplay. And I just gave you one of thousands of examples where the correct move at a certain point can be multiple different things depending on the tank and the situation and the map and what part of the game you're in. And, I mean, it goes on, right? That just a great example right there from what they said and then said afterwards, and how it's probably going to end up getting mech'd into the game. I will say, good on them. They said, hey, you're going to get experience for damage, for assist, and everything else. And that makes me feel like this is something on top to try to re-wicker it a little bit. So I would really be interested to understand how much of this role experience is part of the experience pie that you get, which goes back to what I talked about earlier. If it's insignificant, then what are we doing it for? If it's significant, then I think it's significant for the wrong reasons. All right, here we go. Next thing.
In future ranked battle seasons, we will disable team damage from friendly fire and ramming.
We're removing intentional team damage to decrease toxicity and let players concentrate on battle.
All right, so this is popular. I would be willing to bet, I don't know if I can, how I would put a number on this. I'm going to say a majority of you, but maybe not. It kind of depends on who my subs are. I think a lot of them think close to what I do. Not that you have to. We're not all in lockstep. I like team damage in the game. I think it's interesting. Not because I like to go TK people. Not because I want trolls to be able to TK people. When you're working on that tank, you've got a light tank circling, or your buddy's side scraping, or they're doing some kind of close-in battle, working your shot around, learning how to maneuver, how to do that without hitting your buddy. I find that to be really interesting. It's an interesting, cool part of the game. If you send a shell down range and you're not paying attention to what's going on, you may hit your buddy. You've got to make that calculation at 400 yards. He's about to die. I want to try to save him. I'm going to have to take that risk, that kind of thing. Now, the counter argument, and that's why I talked about earlier about, I'm willing to bet the majority of you are like, you know what, get rid of team damage. It's toxic. It allows trolls to team damage, all these different things. And I am sympathetic to that, but I think you lose a really cool part of the game by putting the diapers on. Right? You ever heard that before? One guy shits his pants, the rest of us wear diapers. That's what I feel like when we start talking about getting rid of some of these more complicating issues with the game, like team damage. Now, team damage is probably going away, more than likely. I don't think anything's going to stop that. And it's unfortunate to me because it's an interesting part of the game. It really is. I like the idea that you have to work around that. I don't like being shot by people, obviously, that are on your same team. I got it. Those accidental shots where, guys are moving back and forth on a corner and someone shoots you in the back of the turret, or you shoot someone in the back, that does suck. I got it. I do. But I feel like the net result, or the net coolness of that system, where you have to be careful where you fire, is diminished by getting rid of that. by getting rid of the team damage. In other words, I don't think you gain as much as you think you do by getting rid of team damage. Right? We're just all going to put the diapers on, and away goes one of the more interesting parts of the game. One of those kind of small mini game within the game. Don't shoot your buddy. How do I work a corner? How do I not shoot my buddy? All that kind of thing. That being said, it's probably going away, and there's not a whole lot we can do. Let me just address the last thing that is beginning to drive me absolutely nuts. And it's across the entire, it's across the world at this point. But in gaming especially, because that's what we're talking about is pixel tanks and gaming. This whole idea of toxicity is on my last nerve. I have to tell you, it is on my last nerve. Most people's definition of toxicity right now is it makes me grumpy or a little bit sad. You know what I'm saying? We're really getting into this situation where we're trying to put the pads out and get the padded room going on, and everyone's wearing their knee pads and elbow pads and helmet. We just do not want to offend anyone at any time for any reason, right? And so we lose things that are interesting, like team damage in a silly pixel tank game, because it's toxic. All it does is make things toxic. XVM is the same discussion. We'll talk about that some other time, but it's the same idea. You are taking away options from people who are otherwise able to handle it, right? By being the vocal minority about toxicity, and then all of a sudden that's gone and we don't have the freedom to have that thing, right? The counter argument is, well, Guido, you don't need the freedom of team damage. It's stupid. Okay, noted. But some people like it. Not because they want to be toxic or hurt other people on their team, because they think it's interesting for the game. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. The toxicity. Every time I hear somebody start talking about toxicity, my eyes roll. ROLL.
However, we don't want artillery to send shells into groups of allied and enemy vehicles and not be punished. That's why we kept the feature of stunning allied vehicles. For stunning allied vehicles, artillery will receive an experience penalty, which will affect its position in the team results. Also, you can be labeled locally as a team killer and get banned for stunning allied vehicles.
Oh boy, artillery players. Sorry, man. I am sorry to hear this, because here comes another hammer. So, you're not going to be able to damage your buddies with artillery anymore. Okay. I mean, I'm glad that if they shoot into a group, I don't take my own artillery damage. Getting killed by my own artillery who's attempting to help me, that's a bummer. And I understand the hypocrisy of what I said earlier about working out how to attack somebody who's close by. But a direct fire shot is much, much more accurate than an artillery shot. So let's just get the relative merits of those two shots and understand that before we kick Guido's butt for it. I get it, but at the same time, it is different. It may not be different enough for you that I got that as well, but we'll leave that for a minute, because the poor artillery players now, if they stun their buddies, they'll get an experience decrease, and they may turn blue or get banned for stunning their buddies. This is under the heading of unintended consequences, or watch out what you ask for, right? Oh, I hate team damage. We got to get rid of that. Wargaming. Okay, watch this. Here, Artie, you no longer can damage your team, but we may ban you for stunning your buddies. All right, what is the requirement to get banned? Is it a lot? Is it a little? Is it really even going to be possible in one battle? Would you have to continually stun over and over your own guys? I don't know. But this is the info we have, right? But the idea of it is pretty interesting, isn't it? You can no longer damage each other, but by golly, if you stun your buddies, Artie, shooting into a group, you might be banned.
You can fire at your allies, but you won't be able to damage or destroy them anymore.
All right.
We have significantly reworked the progression system for the next season.
All right, so progression. We're not going to get into the progression system. Those are the two things I wanted to talk about. The last thing I will say about the no team damage thing that's coming up is I am a bit concerned. I hope this is not going to be an issue, but I'm a bit concerned about unleashing the trolls. the physics abuse trolls, the push trolls, the blocking trolls. The fact is, if you were being messed with somebody enough, and you played without team damaging enough, the system allowed you to put one into them and get them to knock it off. And if maybe they were damaged, just take them out of the game. Or a couple of you to go, this guy is completely ruining everybody's game. Oops, missed, and he's gone. I am not saying that that is the best way to police things, but it was one of the remedies for that kind of player. Now that there's no team damage, what about going full speed and ramming into somebody to push them out of a bush or knock off their aim or just spin them out or whatever it is? Granted, it's illegal right now, but they're not going to get that team damage starting to count up. And the only way they'll ever get caught is later. There's not going to be any immediate, hey, you're in trouble this game kind of thing. If you keep ramming people over and over and over again, eventually you would build up enough team damage that probably you'd turn blue or get banned. So you're taking away some of the automatic stuff that would sort of keep these guys in line, and you're opening it up for a little bit more physics abuse. Okay, got it. There is a system, and you know you can put in send in your ticket and your replay, and eventually they might get banned. But right now, bizarrely, the TK system that they have is sort of keeping some of that, at least some of the tactics that they would use, down a little bit. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong on that. See, here's the thing about when you change stuff like this. When you attempt to incentivize and direct the game in the direction you want as a developer, we'll open up the aperture again. What you get is humans, right? So you develop all these rules, and then you hand it to the player. And players are humans, and they love to figure out how to mess with it, right? Sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose, sometimes because they're trying to get around a disincentive or maximize an incentive, the min-max thing. They will figure out how to use that system to the best possible use for them. They will. That's how it works. So when you're really going after difficult problems like this, you got to watch out what you ask for. And I go back to the Artie thing a little bit on that one, right? With the TK and the Artie thing, I'm like, ooh, I don't know. That's a little harsh for the artillery guys. That's pretty much all I got on that, guys. Tell me what you think down below. Am I completely off base? I'm quite certain I'll take a beating around the head and shoulders about the TK thing. I'm probably in the minority on that. That's fine. Have at it. I like it, but I know that a lot of people don't. I am concerned about this role experience thing. Is it going to matter? And if it doesn't matter, why are we doing it? You know what I'm saying? That's what I've got going on there. Hey, it's a good weekend. It is a ×5 weekend. It is the anniversary. I believe it's the anniversary weekend. So there's a lot of good discounts and things. So make sure you're doing that. You've got to put the code in to get the missions for the anniversary weekend. So do not forget to do that. It's on the portal. Go to the right place and get it. I'll just show it to you actually right now. Let's see. We click on that right there and we go. First go to surprise. Click on this because there's a code for a free day of premium. So make sure you do that. And then make sure that you go here and on anniversary weekend and get the code that is buried down here. I love World of Tanks. Or just type in I love World of Tanks. It will open up these missions right here. Lots of good stuff. You can see all the goodies here. Camouflage, garage slots, all kinds of good stuff. Easy missions. Make sure you put that code in. Otherwise, you're not going to get those missions knocked out right there. And then there are a lot of discounts. Look at these discounts. Fantastic. Lots of premium. These are for, I'm assuming it's also for money, but the gold discount is nice for the Tech Tree premiums. You can get up to a 15% for a tier 8, and for 6 to 7 it's 30, and for tier 5s it's 50%. Making them quite cheap. Consumables, customization, equipment, garage slots. Always good to grab garage slots when they're 50% off. And then the free XP exchange thing is now 35 instead of, what is it, usually 25 or something like that. So if you've been saving up free experience and have a bunch of gold. So make sure you're doing all that. That's all I got for this video, guys. We'll see you later. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.